You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. You are listening to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. I'm your host, Steve Adams, or Mighty Blue. This week, we've just got 3 days to talk about, one of which was a 0 day. Yeah, I've been blessed once more with help and friendship from a very familiar source. I've also discovered that Connecticut, the new state I'm in, has some pretty sweet trails. I know that in 2019, I recall them being tougher than I thought they were in 2014, but so far they've presented me with no difficulties at all. I'm fully aware, of course, that that could change tomorrow. Also, want to let you know that I appear to be outside of any bubble right now because I spend a lot of the day by myself at the moment, rarely seeing more than one, possibly two hikers. That never happened in the past. I suppose for this reason, getting hikers to interview is proving trickier than I'd actually like. And anecdotally, from several of the hostel owners, numbers appear to be well down on last year. I'm not quite sure the reason for this, but I've already spent so much time on trail entirely by myself. I'm absolutely fine with it, but it's definitely noticeable. But before we hear how these last 3 days have gone, let's hear from our sponsor, Polar Steps. If you're heading out on a long hike this year, which I am, I've got something I think you're going to love. It's called Polar Steps. It's a travel tracking app that's going to become a favourite with hikers. You set your start date, let it run quietly in the background, and it maps your entire journey automatically, all on your own beautiful spinning 3D globe. And don't worry, the tracking feature uses about 4% of your battery on a single charge, so it's not going to kill your phone when you're out there. You can add photos and short journal entries as you go, so your map shows you where you were and your words remind you of what that day actually felt like. There's a light social layer too. Family and friends can follow along, or you can keep it completely private. As every hiker says, hike your own hike. And when you're done, you can relive the whole thing in the app or turn it into a stunning coffee table book with your route, stats, photos and stories. And did I tell you that it's entirely free to download and use? The only time you'll be paying anything is if you decide to turn your trip into a book. That's Polar Steps. Track it now, treasure it forever. Day 98, which was Sunday. A 0 day, which means that my total mileage for the week, not doing anything on this day, was just 78.9 miles, a 1.1 mile deficit from my target of 80 miles a week. So I now have a total credit of 52.3 miles, which is still pretty comfortable. So what a day this was for a sports fan. I basically sat in front of the TV all day long. I was there before 7 a.m. in the morning watching the Open Golf Championship because, England, it was in England, in the UK, and it was, the UK is 5 hours ahead of us, so they started very early. So as far as I'm concerned, get straight in front of that TV, I was watching golf all day long. When my host Linda got up, she cooked me a massive breakfast, which I ate at her kitchen table before resuming the position in front of the TV. The only time I really got up was to get a coffee or use the restroom. Linda has definitely rewritten the rules for Airbnb hosts as far as I'm concerned because she continued to ply me with grub all day long. I asked her if I could, and she was happy for me to. I set up my tent on a back deck to dry it out between the end of the golf and the beginning of the Soccer World Cup final. I just sort of regarded these as exercise breaks, getting up to do something. And I found this before. The sun was shining directly on her deck, and my tent, which I put in really wet. I think I'd packed it up from the Canopius Lake shelter a couple of days before. It was pretty darn wet, and it as soon as I started taking it out and put it on the deck, it started drying almost immediately. In fact, you have to use these struts to make the dust and get it into the proper shape. By the time it was up, it was almost dry on the outside. I then turned it over a bit and got it dried on the inside and the bottom, and literally within 15 minutes, it was totally dry. And it's great to be able to dry your tent out that way, but this was great. So I'm very happy I did that. My buddy Eric had called earlier, and he was on his way to join me to watch the World Cup final. I took the call once again at Linda's breakfast table, shoveling a huge plate of spaghetti and pesto into my face. It was bloody delicious. When Eric arrived, now listen to this, he'd just completed a 5-day bicycle trip from Buffalo to Albany, and he turned up with goodies of his own. He bought a few beers for us to drink, as well as some freeze-dried meals for me. What a guy. I actually met Eric on my 2019 hike. I was actually having dinner with Dr. Lynne and her husband, Bob, and Eric drove about an hour and a half, I think, to meet up with us. I was with Trigger as well. And we stayed in touch since, and we've hiked together since. He's just an all-round good guy. And it was great to be watching the game with somebody who had an interest in it, though not surprisingly, considering his previous efforts on his bike for the previous 5 days. He dropped off for a little while. I still needed to put together the podcast for those previous 4 days, so I went back into my room once Eric had left and recorded the show. Unfortunately, the Wi-Fi was quite weak in this house, so it took ages and ages to try to upload everything. In fact, downloading the audio simply didn't happen, and I went to bed expecting to have to get up at 5:30 in the morning to try to get it on the air then. As you know, I don't like being late for this. I try my hardest to be on time, but sometimes you just can't cope with Wi-Fi that doesn't work for you. So even I can't defeat bad Wi-Fi. However, I woke up at about 3:30 in the morning, and that was thunder outside, by the way. 3:30 in the morning, and I looked at my because I do all this on my phone. I looked at my phone, and the signal seemed a little bit stronger. So I tried to download the piece of audio that I'd been unable to do earlier. And this time it worked, and I was able to put the show out about an hour later than normal. Ever the professional, eh? And the Belgian Formula One Grand Prix, I hear you ask. I was able to fit that in before I got serious about getting the podcast done. It was a great day. It's nice to have a break every now and then. I love my hiking. I'm really enjoying the hike, but it's sometimes nice just not to have to do anything. But I was looking forward to the next 3 days when Dr. Lynne was going to be slackpacking me. Day 99, which was Monday. New York 52, mile 1440.3 to Appalachian Trail Metro North Station, mile 1454.7, a 14.4 mile day. Lynn came to pick me up from the Airbnb and met my Russian friend, Linda, who had been a doctor in Russia. So I was being handed over from one doctor to another doctor to take care of my arm. How about that for a bit of luck, eh? I needed a new pair of boots. Mine had started to fall apart, and I delivered them to Dr. Lynne. Now, Lynn can best be described as kind of tiny, but this box of my boots looked like a suitcase. They were so damn big. They were size 15 boots, and we were laughing about the size of them. But I put them on and headed out, and they fitted me perfectly straight away. And it was a beautiful day. Lynn had bought me 2 breakfast sandwiches, one of which I immediately devoured as soon as I got into the woods, while saving the other one till later. It was a lovely day, 62 degrees at the time, with a high of 80 expected, but the humidity was low. What a difference that made. And I immediately noticed the difference with the boots, feeling the security that I just don't have with trail runners. It was just immediately there, that security around the ankle. And I've tried trail runners now, and I've been wearing an ankle brace for a while, but there's nothing like, for me anyway, having these mid-level boots around my ankle that makes me feel much more secure. The plan for the day was to get 15 miles, which is a lot for a new pair of boots, by the way, to the Appalachian Trail Metro North Rail Station. And Lynn commented that it was one of her favourite sections of the trail. And looking at the profile, I was looking forward to a really great day. One of the immediate differences that I also noticed with my new boots was that I could hardly feel the sharper rocks as I stood on them. In my shoes, especially in Pennsylvania, I felt every single one. So that was a big bonus. I got to, I don't even remember the name of the shelter, but I often, when I come to a shelter, if it's not too far off the trail, 0.1 maybe 0.2, I go in there and sit down and have some water and something to eat. And I went into the first shelter. I met I think they called themselves the Fam 4. It's a family of 4 people. Mother and father did the trail in 2011. And they've now got 2 young kids. Big Red, who's about 4 foot tall. He's about 8 years old. He's got this wild shock of red hair, absolutely beautiful hair. And a pretty little kid called Bookworm is his sister. And they make such a lovely family. And I've seen them at the drive-in movie. I did ask them if they'd be interviewed. I've asked a couple of times now. I didn't ask on this day, but I hope one day to be able to interview them because they've got a nice story to tell and they're giving their kids such a great experience. I'd love them to share that with you at some stage. So I hope there's a chance that they will talk to me about it. Today was also the day that I came to the Dover Oak, and as you come out the trail onto the Dover Road, it is there right in front of you. It's a massive thing, I tell you. I don't know if it's the largest, I think it's the largest on the AT, but it's quite almost the local celebrity, the Dover Oak. And then we, passing that, you walk down the road a little bit, then you go back into the woods and then through pasture. Then another boardwalk before coming to the Appalachian Trail Station. That always looks so incongruous to me, to see a rail station with the Appalachian Trail on it as you walk past it near Pauling. Lynne was there, and she turned up about 10 minutes after I got there, so that was lovely. And there was another hiker who was hanging about with me, and I can't remember his name, to be honest with you. I think it was Croc or something like that. And Lynne said, "Would you like a lift?" And this guy was trying to find a local park where he said he understood he could put his tent up. And so she took him there and we dropped him there. Then back at Lynne's, I cleaned up and I ended up having lovely dinner. She cooked meatloaf and nice vegetables and mash. It was a great evening with her and her husband, Bob. Really enjoyed it. It's lovely to be with this family again. Day 100, which was today, Tuesday. The Appalachian Trail Metro North Station, mile 1454.7, to Bulls Bridge Road, mile 1465.9, an 11.2 mile day. Lynne took me back to the station the following morning via the breakfast shop, where we got a couple of breakfast sandwiches again and a coffee. I really hit the spot, I tell you, they're great. But we're going to go back there again tomorrow morning. We got back to where Lynne had picked me up the previous day, and I set off, and I think it was just before 7 a.m. And the reason, I'll tell you the reason in a minute. The path initially goes through pasture, then back into the woods, where it was extremely overgrown at the start. I used my poles to push the damp foliage out of my way, but really my pant legs got soaked straight pretty early, and that dripped down into my shoes, so I had wet feet most of the day, unfortunately. I've got these lecky poles, and when I was thinking about them the other day, they're actually from my first through hike. They're not my original poles because I lost some on my first through hike, but I then bought some off someone else who was finishing his hike because he was injured. So I bought his poles. I broke them. So in somewhere in, I think it was near Pinkham Notch, something like that. And I bought the leckies I'm still using now at Pinkham Notch on my first through hike. And they're now in a bit of a state. You know, the tips have come off now, and they're bent a bit at the bottom. But, you know, they've been very resilient. So I might be in the market for a new set of poles. So if those of you have a particularly strong preference for poles, let me know, and I might check them out. I mentioned that we got there we started off just before 7 a.m, or I started off just before 7 a.m, because the plan was for just a 12-mile day, which I know is a short day for a slack pack, but to Bullsbridge Road in order to avoid the worst of the thunderstorms that were due to come that afternoon. And this serves a double purpose. Not only would I stay dry, I'd also be able to complete my podcast that afternoon. And once again, I'm trying to manage my hike in a way that suits me. Some people don't care about the rain. I'd rather miss it, especially as I fall over on wet rocks and wet roots. So for me, it was all about managing my hike. Well, as you're listening, this is the podcast. So that bit worked out. But the thunderstorms wouldn't cooperate at all. And I got utterly drenched. I was kind of relying upon the radar, which told me that I had until about 12:30 or 1 o'clock before the rain would come. So I said to Lynn, 12 miles? Yeah, I'll do that 6 hours easy. So I should be there by 1 o'clock. So while the woods had this dark, ominous feel all morning, I wasn't concerned too much about the rain starting because the radar was telling me it wasn't going to start yet. The terrain was fairly benign on this day. We were just 2,000 feet of elevation gain and 2,000 feet of loss, and there were no real climbs, just two climbs of any note, and neither of them gave me any problems. There weren't many rocks on the path, and I was looking forward to getting the satisfaction of beating the rain when it started raining. Couldn't believe it. At first, there wasn't much rain, and so I thought it's going to rain for a few seconds, then stop. Well, that didn't happen. So the earlier bits of rain, not much got through the leaves and the trees and so on. So I didn't put on a jacket or anything like that. And then, with very little, or in fact no warning, the heavens opened. I quickly whipped out my jacket, which was actually quite helpful because I've got a mini backpack on, obviously, a day pack. And I've lost so much weight, about 50 pounds now, I think it is, that the jacket is so massive on me that I could put it on over my backpack, which works perfectly. So keeping everything fairly dry for about 20 minutes, of course. I've got a brimmed hat that tends to keep rain off my face anyway. And on this day, it kept the rain away from my new Shocks earphones, which I told you I ordered the other day, which are good, by the way. And the hood of my jacket went over the brim and gave me a pretty snug fit that I hoped would keep the rest of me dry. Now, as you know, I'm a bit of a waterproof skeptic, and my skepticism was rewarded 20 minutes later, obviously 20 minutes, when my sweat met the rain and I got more and more drenched. It doesn't actually bother me, and I was really enjoying the hike, so I just kept plugging away, but taking quite a lot of care on some of the downhills because everywhere was getting increasingly wet. And in fact, it rained so hard that on the downhill towards the end, I was basically walking through a stream. So you have to be very careful with that, obviously. Lynne and I were supposed to meet at 1 p.m, but when I emerged from the trees at Bullsbridge Road at about 12:30, she was waiting for me. Back at hers, I showered and she checked out the wound on my arm, then offered to tell me about a question I'd raised a couple of days ago on the podcast. So I'll play that after this. I'm actually putting this together having warmed up and showered on Tuesday afternoon, but the plan for this evening is to meet up with my buddy Eric and with Lynne at a local brewery. Happy days. I'm being treated to the greatest of trail magic. I'm with Dr. Lynne, who's not only slackpacking me and giving me a room, doing my laundry, feeding me food, but she's picking me up every day and looking after my elbow, so which is pretty cool. Thanks for talking to us, Dr. Lynne.
Sure thing. Glad to have you here.
That's lovely. Thank you. We had a nice chat last night with Bob, your husband, and the whole idea of being a pilgrim and looking after pilgrims along the way is something that was quite important to you, which I thought was a really nice part of the conversation that evening. Mm-hmm. Today, the other week on the show, I said that I had no idea what some of these fences, not fences, these walls that appear in the middle of forests, and you told me you've got an answer. You know what it is. So tell us what it is.
Yeah, the stone walls that you and a lot of the hikers will see as you come north are a manifestation of the history of New England. Mm-hmm. And They started out in the mid-1700s when the first European settlers came and started farming the land. They would have a parcel of land which was forest, and they would cut the trees to clear the land for farming and for raising livestock. They would use the trees to build their houses and initially to build their fences. When they cut the trees, they also found that the land was riddled with rocks.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all a function of what happened as the glaciers receded.
Sure.
Back in the day, they left rocks in the ground. So the farmers had to get rid of the rocks in order to plow the land and plant crops and to have some sort of type of pasture for their livestock.
Sure.
And they would pick up the rocks, they would remove the rocks, and where did they need to? They needed to put them somewhere. So they would put them alongside their wooden fences because they were out of the way. And over the years, the fences, because they were made of wood, would rot and disintegrate and go away, but the rocks remained. And the rocks were, in essence, the new walls for these new enclosures for these pastures and fields. The type of the wall is called a thrown wall or a rubble wall, and literally it is because they would throw the rocks on a pile and wherever they landed,
Yeah.
and they weren't placed delicately or decoratively or something. They just got rid of the rocks and off they went. That's why it's called
Pretty effective as a wall, though, isn't it, really?
Oh, it's standing 300 years later.
Yeah.
So that explains the walls in the pastures, but why are they in the woods?
That's right, yeah.
And that's the $64 question. So around 1850, the Midwest and the Western expansion started, and the farmers in New England, a lot of them picked up and moved west, leaving their fields fallow. And the woods started reclaiming the fields. They would drop seeds.
They are totally reclaiming the fields, aren't they?
They would drop seeds, and the seeds would grow into bushes and then trees, and and all of a sudden, what was once pasture land is now beautiful woods again.
Yeah, amazing.
But the stone walls remain, which is why you see what looks like built stone structures in the middle of a forest.
Yeah, it does.
A neat thing to see if you want to look closely at a stone wall is you can tell whether or not it was pasture land or a field growing crops, because the pasture land was for livestock, animals, and they only needed the larger stones to be cleared. But when you needed to plant crops and to plow the fields, you needed the much smaller stones also to be cleared.
Oh.
So if you look at a wall and you see only large stones, it's most likely that the area surrounding that was pasture land and not cropland. And then if you see something that has both large and small stones, it's more likely that that was an area that was actually farmed.
You know what? It's good to know, because I've walked through so many of these. The trail goes straight through them. They knock a few of these stones down, don't they? And the trail goes straight through them.
Exactly. Yeah. Turn right at the stone wall. A lot of times there'll be, trail directions. Turn right at the stone wall.
Yeah.
Another thing that you might find is it looks like a round kind of wall, and that used to be a cistern where water would be collected for the livestock.
Oh, right.
So sometimes you might see something like that.
I haven't spotted one of those yet, but I wanted to know what it was, and I remember seeing them when I came last time as well, and I didn't know then, so you would be the one to know.
Yeah, yeah. I have one right in my backyard.
Oh, dear.
Yeah,
What, one of those thrown walls?
yeah, right in the backyard.
Oh, how about
yeah,
that?
this used to be, Ridgefield was established in 1709, and the surrounding area used to be farmland.
Right.
We have a stone wall, and it travels across my road and down into the woods.
How cool. How cool is that?
So it's really neat to see that.
Well, it's been a pleasure staying here, and we're going out to dinner tonight, hopefully with Eric.
Yeah.
And it'd be great to see him as well. And I really appreciate you putting.
Yeah, it's good to have you here and to be able to minister to you as you are the pilgrim on this journey of hiking the Appalachian Trail for the third time.
How about that? How about that?
Yeah.
Thanks, Lynn. By the way, and this is probably comes from not being able to pay attention to the markers, like if I pass through 1,400 miles. I haven't done 1,400 miles, but I forgot to mention that I passed 1,000 miles on this trip so far, just a couple of days ago. I know I've still got a heck of a long way to go, and I've got, I think, about 3.5 or about 3 1/3 months to go. But it does feel like quite a landmark, so I thought I'd mention it. With a bit of luck, next week, I hope to bring you more conversations with more hikers. I'm pretty sure that a bunch of people got out of the heat in Pennsylvania when we had those incredibly hot days, and maybe there's a bubble behind me. I kind of hope so. It would be nice to see a few more people. But anyway, I'll see you next time.